Welcome back to Fast Market here on the Schwab Network. It's time for cash tags. For that, let's bring in our next guest. That's Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. So on this Friday, market's selling off. Best Buy hitting 5-year lows. It seems like the tariff impact is going to be a real negative for this company, that competition from Amazon and others at this point. What kind of data do you guys have here on Best Buy?
Yeah, it's a tough week to be an electronics retailer, hey? And so when we look at Best Buy, this is a name that, has been struggling really in the past just to stay relevant after that initial, post-COVID pandemic boom. Seemed like it was starting to get things in line, and now whenever we look at this is a company where tariffs are a real issue for Best Buy. This isn't a perhaps overblown fears. I think around 55% of its products are sourced from China. It also has some exposure in Mexico, but this is a name, when we look at this, it's tough to say, okay, well, let's look at consumer demand right now, because I think that that's kind of the underlying issue at hand is what are the impacts of tariffs on this company long term? And right now that's still pretty uncertain, but as it stands, if, no changes are made, if no deals are made, if things proceed as they are now, we would expect to start to see some price increases as even as early as the second quarter for Best Buy, as it starts to pass along some of those costs to consumers. And we already see a pretty stretched consumer. We already see a consumer who was talking about putting off those big ticket purchases. Last quarter, I think some of those big ticket items like appliances, those comp sales were down by double digits year over year. So this is a company that was already struggling with a bit of a consumer that was weakened from persistent inflation, and now could see additional struggles in terms of pricing on top of that. So, it's tough whenever you look at Best Buy, at least for us on a demand perspective. We're pretty flat year over year, nothing too crazy, nothing too positive, nothing too negative, but much larger macro headwinds at play right now.
Megan, I understand that electronics, where they come from, it's a problem right now. But look at Lululemon and Nike based on the news out of Vietnam. So what this company needs more than anything is probably some deal resolution with the company where they get a lot of their equipment. So I understand why this stock is trading lower. By the way, when they announced that deal, this stock rallied about $4 from about the 58 level up to 62. Now it's back down to just below 61. But this stock had a big rally on some of that deal news. Why? Because if they continue to make these deals to take off these tariffs, then some of the pressure on this company will dissipate. Megan, your thoughts?
Yeah, whenever we look at this, we really are putting companies in 3 different buckets on our end at LikeFolio. We're saying, okay, what are the companies that are, assuming no changes, truly impacted by these tariffs? And we've got those in one bucket. Best Buy would fall in that bucket. We have some companies where we think we have a case of the baby being thrown out with the bathwater. And then we have some companies where we see some resilience and some sheltering from these tariffs. And in that first bucket, one thing that you also have is if these deals are made, like you mentioned, we would expect the stock to pop significantly, because this was the biggest headwind, right? And if that headwind gets removed, then all of a sudden the outlook is totally different and these losses seem way overdone. So I think a lot of that is dependent on what happens there, which we can't know, but I think that that's certainly an option, and that's something that traders can position for.
Megan, when you look at the competitive pressures in here, it's going to be tariffs. It's going to be slowdown in consumer, numbers at this point. Across that wide swath of retail, which got hammered the last couple of days, are you guys seeing decelerating trends in other retailers besides maybe Best Buy?
Yeah, I think that you kind of noted a little bit of a pullback in consumer spending, especially at the end of the first quarter. Whenever we looked at data, we look at things sometimes on a monthly basis, and January was looking pretty strong, February was looking pretty strong, and then now as this March data is rolling in, it just looks a little bit weaker. And so I think that there is a bit of a pullback in consumer spending. I think a lot of that is consumers are waiting to see, okay, what's going to happen. perhaps a wait and see on some big ticket purchases, which has impacted a company like a Best Buy. But we also see some resilience in other names. Whenever we look at consumer demand in a company like a Costco or even like an Amazon, things look pretty strong. And so I think that there are certain companies that are providing these services that consumers are still purchasing at a normal clip, and they're increasingly turning to those companies because they're providing value and they're providing convenience. I think right now, I don't think that Best Buy fits that ticket, though, and it's certainly got some headwinds at play.
Definitely has some headwinds. Hopefully we get some deals over the weekend. That's what we need. All right, great stuff as always, Megan. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, VP of Research at LikeFolio. Kev, I mentioned